This is the 2026 Mercedes-Benz CLA, the small all-electric sedan that finally consigns range anxiety to the history books. Let's check it out. Now, do not underestimate the new CLA because it packs the kind of innovation we're normally, expect on something like a next generation S-Class. Now the numbers. The car that stands beside me can do up to 792 kilometers on a single charge. That means this can go further on a tank full of electrons than something like an EQS. Absolutely an astonishing result for a car this size and in its class. Now that 792 kilometers WLTP figure is from an 85 kilowatt hour NMC battery, which is very impressive. So what's behind its remarkable efficiency? Well, if you look at the CLA in the flesh, you can just see how aerodynamically honed the whole car is. It has this flush front grille. It has so much air bending under the skin. It's got a flat floor. It's got these aerodynamic wheels. It's also got the pop-up door handles, but that's only a fraction of why this car can go so far on a single charge, because it's got these trick tires that have ultra low rolling resistance, and just under there is a electric motor that has not one but 2 speeds, just like a Porsche Taycan. So as well as that trick aero, the low rolling resistance tyres and a 2-speed transmission, the new CLA also comes with Benz's latest silicon carbide inverter, again to enhance efficiency. But the star of the technological jewels offered by the CLA has to be the MMA platform, because it also introduces the brand's latest 800 volt electrical systems. And that means this car has super fast charging speeds. We can top this car up at a rate of 320 kilowatts, which means up to 325 kilometers can be added in just 10 minutes. And those figures are kind of sandbagging because Mercedes has seen even higher charging rates in the real world. Inside Benz's EV Pioneer, well, again, it looks like a S-Class because you get a large 10.25 inch digital instrument cluster, and you also get an additional 14.6 inch infotainment system that both sit behind this single screen. And later on, you'll also get the option of a further 14 inch passenger display, which remarkably, thanks to its new MB.OS operating system, will allow passengers to play Call of Duty and Fortnite and even watch movies on the move. One trick thing, actually, there's also a camera there to stop the driver looking. So as soon as you look, the system stops playing. One of the biggest innovations of the new CLA is the MB.OS. In fact, some of the engineers we spoke to said it's even more important than the EV tech that this car comes with. I'm not sure about that. Anyway, it's been designed in-house and has no relation to any Google system, but does embed some Google, and also comes with the car maker's next generation AI tech that includes things like ChatGPT. To make sure it's more accurate than ChatGPT, it also embeds Microsoft Bing and Google Gemini. So when you ask it a question, there's, well, half a chance it will give you the right answer. One other thing I should point out is, aside from the hazard warning button right there, there are no physical buttons. There's even haptic touch buttons on the steering wheel. But you know what? On the move, it's pretty slick. It hasn't annoyed me. I don't want to throw myself from the car as I struggle to operate the system. So yeah, it's easy. There's plenty of shortcuts along the bottom here. It's intuitive, it's fast, and it's responsive. Of course, the CLA is not perfect, and you might have seen me bump my head as I got in, and that's because they've had to package the 85 kilowatt hour battery beneath the floor, and because designers wanted to keep the swoopy styling, well, the trade-off is there's not that much headroom back here. In fact, my head actually rubs the lining. There's also a panoramic roof, and that panoramic roof is because there was simply not enough space to package a roof headlining, which is which was remarkable. I don't know if this is going to be good enough for Australia as well, because this car doesn't have a sun blind. Other things worth mentioning is when it comes to luggage space, the rear boot is actually 50 litres smaller than the previous generation CLA at around 401 litres. But in the EV and the hybrid that will come later, you also get a 101 litre frunk. So ultimately, there is more space, if only for your luggage. So I think it's now time we take the new CLA for a drive and find out what it's like behind the wheel. Originally, when the CLA was launched, Mercedes-Benz was forced to admit that it was not compatible with 400 volt charging. Now that's a problem because the infrastructure in Australia, well, it's mainly consists of older chargers. But thankfully, the German car maker has a fix, and it involves adding a booster onto the CLA. But the problem with that is it limits charging to just a third of the quickest charging speeds of an 800 volt charging. So yep, top-ups are limited to just 100 kilowatts. Initially, when the CLA launches in Australia, we will have the choice of 2 all-electric powertrains. There will be the CLA 250 Plus that has a single rear-mounted e-motor that produces 200 kilowatts and 335 newton meters of torque. And there'll also be a more powerful all-wheel drive CLA 350 4MATIC. And now that one has a maximum power output of 260 kilowatts and 515 newton meters of torque. It's also capable of a 0 to 100 kilometers per hour sprint of just 4.9 seconds. But even the CLA 250 is still pretty brisk, considering it has that huge 792 kilometer range. That car takes around 6.7 seconds to hit 100. The new CLA is largely a joy to drive. In fact, there's a lot of similarities between it and bigger limos like the S-Class. And the first thing is, it is so quiet and refined. I mean, you do not hear the inverters, you do not even hear the whine of the electric motors. This thing is silent in most circumstances. The other thing which is nice is the steering, while precise, is nice and light around town, and there's plenty of power, especially with the all-wheel drive version we're in now. Now, in all markets, the Mercedes CLA will come with just one suspension tune, and it consists of passive dampers. There will be no trick adaptive dampers in the sedan, at least, but we think the tech will come with an SUV later. And that means that the CLA largely rides okay, but on roads like this we're on now, it can get a little bit busy. But overall, comfort, refinement, this thing is, well, top of the class. But it is important to point out that the CLA is not a sports sedan. When you do try to start to hustle it, it really starts feeling a little bit out of its comfort zone. And that's because, wait for it, this small sedan weighs over 2,000 kilos. This is a 2-ton CLA. It's insane. As well as boosting efficiency, the new 2-speed transmission also enhances performance. And around town, it mostly stays in first gear, and that means there's sprightly acceleration off the mark. But things get more interesting as you up the pace. Now, Mercedes-Benz say that the 2-speed transmission swaps cogs between around 60 kilometers per hour and around 110 kilometers per hour. And it is utterly seamless. It's really impressive how the system just swaps gears without you ever noticing. Mercedes-Benz claims a drag coefficient of just 0.21 on the CLA, and you really do notice how it slips through the air, because I'll demonstrate right here. When you come off the throttle, it just holds the speed. It just continues to cruise along. It really doesn't hit that sort of wall of air that most cars do. So we've only lost about 5 kilometers per hour. It is remarkable. You really do believe those figures. It's also remarkable how, in the real world, the range translates, because yesterday we drove a CLA 250 and we drove it not in an efficient manner at all. And even with 70% remaining charge showing, we were still seeing around 500 kilometers of range, which is absolutely astonishing. So I think if you buy a CLA, things like range anxiety, well, it just won't be a problem, because you'll always have plenty of range and super fast charging to back it up when you do need to pull over, apart from if you can't find a fast charger in Australia. One thing that is worth mentioning about the new CLA is it comes with Mercedes-Benz latest brake-by-wire technology, and the system is absolutely astonishing because it blends brake regeneration with real braking in such a seamless manner you can never tell which is which. In normal circumstances, you have the choice of normal brake regen, or you have the choice of a stronger brake regen, which gives you that sort of one pedal feel, or you can just turn it off altogether. But the best way to drive the CLA, at least in town, is to switch it to drive auto. Then this clever system uses the radar and cameras to slow the car depending on what's happened with the car in front, which is excellent because you get the maximum regen in town at all times. The only issue is if you're following a taxi driver like we did earlier, who kept slamming on his brakes, you slam on your brakes too. But apart from that, it's very impressive. So once the new CLA has been introduced to Australia, a mild hybrid version will also come. Now that car will blend a all new 1.5 litre 4-cylinder turbocharged petrol with a 8-speed dual clutch transmission that has within it integrated a 20 kilowatt electric motor. And that really should provide the best of both worlds for people who aren't quite ready to plug in and charge. The big news for Australia though will come later, probably towards the end of 2026, when we get the mid-size GLA SUV. Now there'll be two variants. There will probably be a GLA wagon and a GLA coupe, and that will benefit from all the powertrain technology that's introduced by this small sedan. After 2 days behind the wheel, it's hard not to come away blown away by the experience of driving the new Mercedes-Benz CLA. This is, make no mistake, a deeply impressive EV with pioneering tech that for most people will just transform the EV experience day to day. This is a car you don't worry about range anxiety anymore. But there's a problem, because when it arrives in Australia in the second half of 2026, we think it will cost around $90,000, and that is a lot of money for, well, a sedan that most Australians will just overlook. So instead, we think most will wait a little bit longer for the GLA to arrive. But from the shape of things, it will be well worth waiting for, because this, well, feels like a bit of a game changer.